may as well go home as I did on my own, alone again. Naturally, to think that only yesterday.
Hello everyone, my name is Mariel and today I'll be presenting my research paper titled Female Identity Through the Male Gaze in the Virgin Suicides. To begin, Jeffrey Eugenides' novel shows how obsession and fascination can distort reality. The story of the Lisbon girls is, in many ways, not actually about the girls themselves, but about the boys who watch them. Because of the boys' obsession, the Lisbon sisters are never seen as individuals or as unique women. Instead, they become symbols symbols of beauty, femininity, mystery, and loss. What the boys fall in love with is not the sisters' real personalities, but rather the idea of them, a fantasy they collectively build in their minds. Eugenides used this narrative to criticize the destructive nature of the male gaze. By filtering everything through the boy's point of view, he exposes how male perception, shaped by fantasy, nostalgia, and cultural repression, can distort truth and ultimately erase real female identity. This idea closely connects with Munden's argument about how American popular culture portrays girlhood. Munden explains that film often present girlish femininity with exaggerated behaviors, high-pitched voices, dramatic gestures, restlessness, and loud reaction. In these portrayals, girlhood becomes associated with immaturity and instability. According to Munden, American culture treats adolescent girlhood as a transitional and fragile stage, something fascinating yet dismissed and misunderstood. When we analyze the Virgin Suicide through this lens, we see that the boys' view of the Lisbon sisters mirrors this cultural pattern. The sisters become distant, idealized figures, admired but never truly understood. Their actions, even their suicides, are interpreted through a lens of chaos, mystery, and aesthetic tragedy rather than taken serious as expression of pain and identity. To the boys, the Lisbon sisters represent their deepest desires beautiful, unreachable, dreamlike. This is why the boys remain mesmerized. The girls are less like people and more like embodiment of longing. Eugenides criticized this destructive romanticization by showing how it blinds the boys to the sisters' real suffering. Sofia Coppola's film adaptation reinforces this argument visually. The film highlights the novel themes through soft, nostalgic aesthetic, golden lighting, pastel colors, and dreamlike cinematography. The sisters are framed with an emphasis on stereotypical beauty long blonde hair, soft movements, rosy lips, and delicate clothing. The camera focuses on these features, turning the girls into aesthetic objects, almost like dolls. The melancholic soundtrack deepens this effect, wrapping the sisters in a feeling of fragile, as them of being pure. As a result, the film mirrors how society often portrays young women beautiful, emotionally, and symbolically perfect, rather than real and complex. Now I want to focus on one of the most revealing passages in the Virgin Suicides. The boys say, "We felt the impressment of being a girl. We knew, finally, that the girls were really women in disguise, that they understood love and even death, that our job was merely to create the noises that seemed to fascinate them." This passage communicates the paradox at the heart of the case. On the surface, the boys believe they understood the Lisbon sisters, but they don't. They barely speak to them. Their fascination grows, not from real connection but from distance, silence, and longing. Their curiosity becomes fantasy, and their fantasy becomes into desire. Shostak helps explain this dynamic by describing the effect of the novel's plural narrator. She writes, because the voice is plural, it promises to offer more reliable point of view, and the assumptions that determine its interpretations would seem to have social legitimacy. In other words, because the narrator speaks as we, the voice assumptions feel authoritative, almost like a viewpoint of society itself. Their misunderstandings gain power simply because they are collective. The male gaze is trained by this shared imagination. Next, I want to highlight another powerful moment in the novel that exposes the destructive force of the male gaze. It was crazy to make love on the roof at any time, but to make love on the roof in winter suggested derangement, desperation, self-destruction. Here, objectification shifts from desire to judgment. Luke's sexual rebellion becomes spectacle, something to watch, mythologize, and label. Her body becomes a commodity. She is no longer seen as a young girl, but she is seen as a tragic beauty. An author, Deans, expands on this idea. She writes about surviving Lisbon sisters trying to save their dying tree. The boys narrate. They seem to be worshipping, like a group of druids. This comparison transforms the girls into mythical figures disconnected from real life. Instead of seeing them as struggling teenagers in a suffocating suburban home, the boys cast them as part of a timeless ritual, something magical and symbolic. By doing this, the boys erase the sisters' individuality. Their thoughts, fears, intelligence, and suffering disappears. What remains is an aesthetic fantasy, beautiful, tragic. Eugenides invites readers to recognize this distortion. The true tragedy is not the mystery of the girls. It is the society's failure to see them as real human beings. Their deaths are shaped not by their destiny or myth, but by a man made environment, an environment of repression, misunderstanding, and silence. The boys never truly look at the Lisbon sisters. They only look at the fantasy they have created. The Lisbon sisters' suicides are tragic, but in the world of the virgin suicides, they become something even more unsettling, a final act of agency, a radical attempt to reclaim their bodies and shatter the roles assigned to them through the relentless male gaze. If the boys and the community insist on defining the girls as fantasies, the sisters make their last choice, the only part of their story that cannot be rewritten. Their destruction forces the narrative back into their hands, not as victims of fate, but as young women trapped in a society that refuses to see them. If the world only recognizes them as objects, then the girls decide the terms of their disappearance. Eugenides show us a painful truth. The male gaze does not have to be intentional to be destructive. The boys never mean harm. Their obsession is fueled by adolescent curiosity, by confusion, but that makes it more dangerous, not less. Their desire turns the sister into symbols, pretty, unreachable, perfect in memory. Idealization is immortal. It cannot root, or change, or talk back. Debra Shostak writes that the reader must listen against the sound of anonymity, against the nostalgic chorus of the neighborhood boys. Their voice is confident, polished, collective, but beneath that surface is the real story, the one almost no one hears, the Lisbon sister desire, their need of freedom, their plea simply to live, as Therese says, if anyone would let them. That might have been the story, Shostak tells us. But the boys defeat it with their oversights, their romanticizing, their refusal to comfort reality. Bronfen's theory tells us that Western culture, the image of dead woman becomes a powerful aesthetic symbol. Paradoxically, in death, a woman can destroy the passive image society forces onto her and gain an autonomous self image. Lux Lisbon and the sisters embodies this contradiction perfectly. Before her confinement, Lux is self assured. She moves with centrally rebelliousness and desire. She appears whole. Bronfen will call this a narcissistic sense of wholeness. Lux believes in her own fullness, her own agency. But then comes Trip. His abandonment in a football field is unheroic, unexpected, almost cruel in its ordinaries. And in that moment, he leaves Lux with a physic wound, fracturing that imaginary wholeness that she had built. And it doesn't end there. After Tripp's betrayal comes parental confinement, social suffocation. The Lisbon home becomes a sealed tomb long before any of the girls die. Their isolation is a figural death, a symbolic erasure. Lux herself says, "We're suffocating." And she is. They all are. Masamundi Mobden also supports this theory. If society insists on defining them, if the boys, the parents, the neighborhood force an identity upon them, then the sisters reclaim their identity the only way left to them through death. Bronfen argues that by bringing death upon themselves, women destroy the passive image imposed on them. The Lisbon sisters turn their bodies, their story, their memory into their own. The male gaze objectifies them. Suicide becomes their final, radical act of agency. Because the community, especially the boys, recognizes them only as images, as fantasies, as mysteries, as objects, the sisters refuse that role. They reject the identities forced upon them. Their suicides become the only moment in which they define themselves internally, not as the boys' fantasies, not as society's myth, but as active subjects claiming control. In the end, what Brompton helped us see is not simply tragedy, but rebellion. The Lisbon sisters destroyed the gaze that tried to contain them. They rewrite their own image in the only way the narrative leaves open. Their last decision is devastating, but it's theirs.
Again, naturally, to think that only yesterday I was cheerful, bright and gay, looking forward to who wouldn't do the role I was about to play. When as if to knock me down, reality came.